Good morning, guys. Welcome back to Miss McKoy's Learning Center. We are going into our second week of our forensic science lesson, and today we are going to do how to solve a murder. Yay! This is going to be so exciting. So first things first, guys, every time we sign on, the first thing we do when you guys enter into this room is you guys are going to go and complete your do now. So for 2 minutes uninterrupted, you guys are going to answer the do now question that is currently on the screen. What do you think is needed to solve a murder? You guys are going to drop those responses in the chat, and I'm going to read them aloud as I see them appear on my screen. 2 minutes are on the clock. Go ahead and answer that question. Excellent. I'm seeing excellent responses in the chat. One thing I see is someone says you need a victim. That is very true. Someone says you need a crime scene. That is an excellent response. Oh, excellent. Someone said you need a police officer. Good job. All right, so those are all excellent responses, guys. So let's go ahead and jump into our lesson. What is on the agenda? So let's just go ahead and get the logistics out of the way. So our learning intentions for this lesson is students will learn the principles and techniques of forensic science to analyze evidence and develop hypotheses to solve a mock murder case. Success criteria. By the end of this lesson, you guys are going to be able to solve a murder. Yay! And then also you'd be able to define key forensic concepts, analyze evidence to identify suspects and timelines, interpret evidence to form logical hypotheses, communicate findings effectively, collaborate with peers, and demonstrate ethical behavior and legal understanding. So let's jump right into it. So drop in the chat, who watches crime shows? If you do, list which ones you guys actually watch. The two on the screen are like one of the most popular ones. Everyone knows Law and Order Special Victims Unit. It is a scripted television show that actually takes real life events and cases and they reenact them. And the first 48 is actually a real live reality show that covers crime cases, some unsolved murders, some solved cases right then and there during the televised episode. So drop in the chat some of the episodes that you guys actually watch or crime shows you guys actually look at. Oh, excellent. I also watch Fatal Attraction on TV1. That is one of my favorites. Someone put they watch Matlock. That is really good. Really, really good. Judge Judy. I love Judge Judy. But guys, when I say crime shows, let's stick mostly with those that solve crimes, solve murders, not actual like litigations and civil cases and things like that. Excellent. Somebody put CSI, Law and Order. That is a really good one. Chicago PD. My mom loves that show. So excellent, guys. So you guys have a gist of what we talk about in terms of crime shows. So first things first, what is forensic science? So forensic science is the application of scientific principles and techniques to investigate crimes and analyze evidence. So in layman's terms, that just simply means what are the scientific methods that we need to order to solve a crime. So when you get to a crime scene, you're going to have to be able to establish that crime scene. You're going to have to be able to pick up pieces of evidence and being able to look at what time of place, what place did this crime take place at, what time of day, when the person actually died, based off of how cold their body is, their body temperature, the placement of the body, things of that sort. Importance in criminal investigations. Forensic science plays a crucial role in solving crimes by providing scientific analysis of evidence to identify suspects and establish facts. So again, if we have a crime scene and we see a footprint, we need to be able to see that footprint to kind of say, is this footprint from a person that has a bigger size shoe, a smaller size shoe? We need to be able to say, we found a hair follicle. Let's see if we can run it in our database to see if we have any matches. If we see anything like a fingerprint, a blood spatter, anything like that, we need to be able to test it to kind of give us an understanding or at least a clue of who our suspect may be. So key forensic techniques, we're going to go over this later on in the presentation. Some key techniques for forensic science are fingerprint analysis, If we have a fingerprint, we'll be able to go ahead and collect that fingerprint, which looks similar to the one that's on our screen. Collect that fingerprint and run it through our database to see if it has any matches. That'll be able to help us identify our suspect and or our victim. DNA profiling, that is the individual profiling of each person. We all have our own DNA makeup. Again, we run it through our database to be able to identify who our victim may be. Sometimes bodies may decompose and the person is unrecognizable. So we could run that through DNA databases and see if we have any hits. Ballistics, when a gun is fired, we could do a ballistics report to see what type of firearm it came from. Toxicology reports, if our victim passed away, we need to know what was in their system at the time of their death. So we could test it to see if this victim was poisoned, to see if they had a drug overdose, to see if they had alcohol poisoning or anything possibly in their system. And a crime scene investigation. One of our classmates dropped in the chat a CSI. So crime scene investigation is exactly how the show is on Law and Order, where you literally have forensic science or crime scene investigators go out to a crime scene and establish everything in terms of what happened, what could have possibly happened, and create a timeline of events based off what they actually see in front of them. So the crime scene itself, a crime scene is any location where evidence of a crime may be. So if a person was hit by a vehicle and their body lays somewhere, but their shoe flew across the street, those two places are both the crime scenes. So there's an importance of preserving evidence. Preserving the integrity of the crime scene ensures that evidence remains uncontaminated and can be accurately analyzed. So say, for example, if we have someone, we have a footprint, and we think that footprint may belong to the suspect, and then a crime scene investigator comes and steps on top of that footprint, they have now contaminated the footprint and they've now contaminated the crime scene, because now we can't establish if that actually belongs to the crime scene investigator or if that footprint belongs to the perpetrator. Overview of different types of evidence found at crime scenes. Physical evidence like fingerprints, DNA, blood spatter, fibers, and weapons. So fingerprints could be something like somebody was drinking on a glass and they left a fingerprint behind. DNA, their lipstick stain that was left on the glass. Blood spatter. If a person was hit with blunt force objects, the blood could splatter and go anywhere in the room. It could hit the wall, it could hit the ceiling, it could be droplets of blood on the carpet. So that's always good. Fibers such as like hair follicles we could use, and weapons. We could see if the weapons has the fingerprint of a victim or the suspect. So analyzing evidence. This is the most important part of being able to solve a murder. So when we have bloodstains, as I just said, blood spatter patterns on the walls and floor of a crime scene can indicate the type of weapon that was used, the direction of the force applied, and the position of the victim and perpetrator during the crime. So if the victim was running away from someone and the perpetrator was behind them and hit them with a blunt force object, if the person was hit directly in the back of their head, we'd know automatically that person was running away from their perpetrator, and the suspect was behind the victim. If the victim was laying in a bed in the sleeping position, we'll know that the perpetrator stood above them while that person was sleeping and was unaware that they were going to be attacked. So those are different things that could kind of establish how the victim was injured at the time of their murder. So DNA evidence. DNA samples collected from under the victim's fingernails can help identify the perpetrator if they left behind skin cells or other biological material during a struggle. So if you scratch somebody's face, if you scratch them anywhere, whether you're pulling their skin or you're drawing blood from them, that can help you. And they always tell people, God forbid, if you are in a situation where you are being attacked, try to scratch this person, because that will help you to draw blood or get their DNA that can help you later on identify who the perpetrator is. Fibers and hairs. Fibers from the suspect's clothing found on the victim's body or at the crime scene can provide a link between the suspect and the crime. Footprints and tire marks. Impressions left in mud or blood at the scene can be compared to known shoe or tire patterns to identify potential suspects or vehicles. So when you guys see different cars, like I drive a Nissan Altima, my tire will be much different from a Jeep Grand, I can't even get the word out. Thank you for telling me that. One of the students dropped in the chat, Jeep Grand Cherokee. So those tires are different from one another, and it's easily able to be established what type of vehicle left those tire tread marks. Footprints. When you guys look at Uggs, if you ever stepped on the ground in the snow or in the mud in Uggs impression has the Ugg sign in a circle and it has little ridges around the Ugg symbol. So that's easily identifiable. If you see Nikes, Nike also has the circular motion under the sneakers with the Nike sign. So different sneakers all have different prints on the bottom of it to help you identify. So if the murderer stepped in blood on their way out, we could be able to identify the type of shoe they had and the size shoe, and that will help us later on. Same thing with the tire impressions left behind. Weapons or tool marks. Tool marks on a broken door frame or a bullet recovered from the scene can be analyzed to determine the type of weapon used and potentially link it to a suspect's weapon. Digital evidence, surveillance footage can always help us. So again, if you guys look, if we say, well, we have a camera and we have a footprint. Well, this footprint says that this person had on a pair of white Air Forces. And then we look in the camera and we see a person with a pair of white Nikes on. We can say, okay, most likely we could establish this person as being our suspect. So there's a lot of work and a lot of knowledge that goes into being able to analyze evidence. So collecting evidence, this is also very important because it preserves the evidence, because evidence is needed. Once we find who our perpetrator is, we need to be able to take this evidence to court with us. So bagging and tagging evidence, you have to go ahead, every crime scene, bag every piece of evidence and tag it. So you have to number each piece of evidence. If we find a shoe, that's something that we have to bag and tag. If we find a pair of jeans with blood stains on it, that's something that we also have to bag and tag. This method involves carefully placing each piece of evidence in a separate container or bag to prevent cross-contamination. Swabbing for DNA. Swabbing is used to collect biological samples such as blood, saliva, or other bodily fluids for DNA analysis. Photographing evidence. Make sure you take pictures of every little thing because every little piece of evidence can help you build the timeline and establish what actually took place and what is actually evidence. So photographing the crime scene and all pieces of evidence is crucial for documentation and analysis. Photographs provide a visual record of the scene and can capture important details that may be missed during the initial examination. So these are very important pieces of being able to solve your murder, and that's the collection of evidence. So with the information that we just went through, who is ready to solve a murder? Drop in the chat. Who is ready? Yes, 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 yes. So let's go ahead and get into it. So we have a mock murder trial scenario, the case of the missing heirloom. So background information. Mrs. Amelia Smith, a wealthy widow, was found dead in her mansion. The cause of death was determined to be poisoning. The primary suspect is Mrs. Smith's nephew, Mr. Charles Johnson, who stood to inherit a substantial portion of her estate. What you guys are going to do for the next 2 minutes is you're going to establish your crime scene. You're going to establish a reason why. I gave you a scenario why he may have killed his aunt, which was because he stood to go ahead and get a large portion of her inheritance. You guys are going to create this scenario, establish it, and tell us how she was murdered, why she was murdered, the timeline of when the murder actually happened, and how you guys are going to go ahead and solve it and prove that her nephew actually poisoned her. Excellent, guys. I see every group that was broken into, the guys that were divided into groups, you guys all finished within the allotted time. I cannot wait to go on Google Classroom to read all of your assignments. So let's go ahead and move on. We're running out of time, but we always have the best time and always run out of time when the lessons are always the best and always fun. So guys, before you go ahead and dismiss, I want you guys to go ahead and complete this exit ticket. What strategies or skills did you use during your mock trial